Today we're going to learn how to measure the length of objects using a ruler. So I want to familiarize you with a ruler. If you have one at home, I ask that you get it out so that you can take a look at yours as well. But if you don't have one, it's okay. No big deal. I'm going to be showing you mine. But it would be great if you could see it in real life also. So, on most rulers, there are two different units of measurement. And I'm going to zoom, I'm going to kind of get much closer so you can see. On my ruler, you can see that these are inches. And if you flip it over, we have this side which measures the length in centimeters. Okay? Now, inches is the form of measurement that we use most of the time in the United States. Most of the rest of the world measures things using centimeters. So we call our measurement system the English measurement system. So England uses this as well. And the measurement system that uses centimeters is called the metric system. They're just two different systems used to measure the length of objects. Neither is right or wrong. They both work. But you'll notice that inches are bigger than centimeters. So if you look here at my ruler, okay, from 0 to 1 inch is this long, all right, which is about the length of the tip of my finger down to this first line here. That's about 1 inch. Now, centimeters are smaller. You can see that the space from 0 to 1 centimeter is smaller than the space from 0 to 1 inch. So, we're going to be focusing on how to measure using inches right now. And I just wanted you to be aware that these are centimeters and that's another way to measure. So, when you look at my ruler, okay, each inch is listed. So 1 inch, 2 inches, 3 inches, 4 inches, and then all the way up to 12. There's 12 inches in a foot. And all of these little tick marks on the ruler represent fractions of an inch. So it would be too difficult for a ruler to list out what each of these fractions is worth because they're so small. And so we have to learn how to figure out what they're worth without seeing the number listed. Now, on my ruler, you will notice that if I were to count these, and I'm sorry that it's probably a little bit blurry, but if I were to count all of the lines in between the 0 and the 1, there would be 16 total lines. So this ruler is broken up into 16 fractions of an inch. Some rulers have only 8 lines in between the 0 and the 1. They don't break it apart as much. So I'm going to show you a picture of what that looks like. Now this is not to scale, which means that this is not really 1 inch. This is longer than 1 inch, but I stretched it out so that you could see how to use the lines to measure. Okay, because if I tried showing you just on here while you're learning, it would be a little bit tricky. So let's take a look. Between 0 and 1, let's count how many lines there are on this pretend ruler. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We count 1 as our 8th one. So there are 8 lines between 0 and 1. So there are 8 parts, okay? This 1 inch is broken into eighths. So each of these little lines represents 1/8 of an inch. 1/8 of an inch. So this would be 1/8 of an inch. Okay? This is 1/8 of an inch. This is 1/8, and so on and so forth. So really, if you were to ask, okay, how long would it be from here to here? Okay? You have 3/8 in between. So it would be 3/8 of an inch is how long this would be. Okay? So I'm going to list these out. here. So this is 1/8, and now we get to here, and it's 2/8 of an inch, and this is 3/8 of an inch, 4/8 of an inch, 5/8 of an inch. Sorry, my marker is, see how difficult it is to label this? My marker's not skinny enough. 6/8 of an inch, 7/8 of an inch, and then this 1 hole is 8/8. Okay? 8/8. Now, whenever we have an easier way to describe something, we do so. So instead of calling this one right here, I'm going to put a little star above it. Instead of saying that from 0 to this line is 4/8 of an inch, instead we're going to simplify that, and we're going to call that 1/2, because 4/8 is also 1/2. They're the same value. 4 is half of 8. So this mark right here, that's why this line is longer than these other ones, because it's an important, it's like a benchmark number. You'll often hear people saying, you know, that's about 1.5 inches, or that's about 3.5 inches. You're more likely to use this benchmark half of an inch when you are estimating measurement than you are to use these exact 2/8 and 3/8 and 5/8 of an inch. So, even though this is broken into 8ths, when we see this one halfway between the 0 and the 1, the one that's nice and long here in the middle, we would refer to this as 1/2. We wouldn't refer to it as 4/8. So if I had a pencil and I wanted to know how long it was, okay, here's my pencil, I wouldn't say that it is 4/8 of an inch. I would say that it is 1/2 of an inch, because that's a more standard way to describe it. Now, if the pencil was only this long, okay, not even that long, okay, and it stops here, then I would say that it is 3/8 of an inch, because there's no other way to describe that that amount. So we know that this long line in between, right in between the 0 and the 1, halfway in between, is worth 1/2. So we're not going to call it 4/8. We're going to refer to it as 1/2. Okay. We also know that the lines here that are a little bit longer, so like this line and this line, okay, these ones are a little bit longer. If we didn't have these little ones here and we just had these long ones, there would be 1, 2, 3, 4 of them. This is 1/4 of an inch, and over here this is 3/4 of an inch. Okay, these ones that are a little bit longer. So if I were to see a pencil that was this long, okay, instead of describing it as 2/8 of an inch, I would describe it as 1/4 of an inch, because that's a more standard way to describe it. So, I am going to erase my little 8ths marks. Okay, I'm going to erase my little 8ths marks so that it's a little bit easier for us to just focus on measuring to the 1/4 inch, because that'll be easier when we're first learning. Okay, so when you look here, you will see this first line is 1/4 of an inch. This is 1/2 of an inch. This is 3/4, and that's 1 hole. 1 hole. Okay. Now I'm going to erase these little lines as well, so that there's not as many and you don't feel as overwhelmed. Okay. So now, yet again, from 1 to 2, we have this broken up into fourths. This is 1/4. This is 2/4, which is the same as 1/2, which is how we're going to describe this. And this is 3/4. Okay, so if I had a candy bar that was this long, okay, I'm going to write Hershey's on it. Okay, and I'm going to make it a little bit more perfect in my length. Okay, I could measure it. I'm starting at 0, and it goes all the way to this mark. So this is where it stops. So it's not just 3/4 of an inch. It's 1 and 3/4 of an inch. So this Hershey's bar would be 1 and 3/4 of an inch. All right. Now that you have a little bit of an idea of how measurement works with a ruler, I want to show you on paper how that would look. So let's zoom in. All right. Do me a favor and get out, if you don't already have out, a pencil and paper or a dry erase board and a marker, because we're going to work together and we are going to try some. Okay, so let's look here. We have this crayon and we're going to measure the length of this crayon. Let me get a pen. Okay, so I can easily see that this crayon is not quite 3 inches because it hasn't gotten to the 3, but it's more than 2 inches. So I know for sure that it's going to be 2 inches and then part of another inch, because it's going to be past 2 but not quite at 3. So it's going to be 2 inches and then some more. Now we have to figure out how much more it is than 2. So as you remember, that I told you, if you were to see this line right here, which is halfway between the whole numbers, this is your 1/2 mark. And if you want to mark that to make it a little easier for you, you can. Okay? And if you recall, I told us that we weren't going to pay attention to these really tiny, tiny lines because we're still learning. So we're going to focus on the 1/4 inches. So this is 1/4 of an inch. Remember, this one is 2/4, but it's also 1/2. And then this next line here is 3/4. And we're going to pretend that these little tiny lines aren't there. Okay? And in the paper in the worksheet that I give you to work on, I'm going to white out those tiny little lines so that you don't get distracted by them and get confused by them. All right? So, I can see that this crayon stops at this 3/4 of an inch mark. So, this crayon is 2 and 3/4 inches long. That's how long this crayon is. It's very important when you measure that you label your measurement, because remember, there are other ways to measure. You could be measuring something in centimeters, or in millimeters, or in yards, or feet. And so people need to know, because 2 and 3/4 doesn't mean anything if you don't describe the unit of measurement. So this crayon would be 2 and 3/4 inches long. You could abbreviate inches, and instead of writing inches out, you could write IN period. That's an abbreviation for inches. Okay? Now, let's look here at this next one, at this glue stick. Okay? I want you on your paper, because this one's a little easier, to write down how many inches long you think this glue stick is, and then we'll review it together. Okay. As you can see, this glue stick is an exact number of inches. It's not part of an inch. So it is 3 whole inches. So I would write 3, and then I could write IN period for 3 inches. Or I could write out inches if I wanted to. Okay. Let's look at this next problem. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask that you pretend that these tiny little lines don't exist. We're not going to focus on them. Okay? So, remember, halfway between the two whole numbers is the 1/2 mark. Okay? Halfway between is the 1/2 mark. These little lines each represent a fourth. So this would be 1/4. Remember, this is also 2/4, which is the same as 1/2, and this is 3/4. So 1/4, this is 1/2 or 2/4, and 3/4. And the same here. This is 1/4. 1/2 is also 2/4. This is 3/4, and then this is a whole. Okay? So, if you were to see the length of this eraser, it starts at 0 and it goes all the way to here. It ends on this 1/2 mark. But it is not only 1/2 of an inch. It's more than just 1/2 of an inch. If it was only 1/2 of an inch, it would be here. It's past this 1 whole mark, and then it's another 1/2 of an inch past that. So it's 1 whole plus 1/2 of an inch. 1.5 inches long. It's very, very important that you don't ignore how many whole inches it is as well. It's not just this fraction of an inch. If that were the case, it would have stopped here before you ever got to the 1 whole inch. Because there's a big difference between saying that this eraser is 1.5 inches long and just saying that it is 1/2 of an inch long. If it was 1/2 an inch long, it would have stopped right there. Okay? All right? Now, let's look at this pen. Okay? You want to look at how many whole inches long it is first. Okay? So write down how many whole inches long it is, and then we'll see if you get it right. Okay? If you said that it was at least 5 whole inches long and then part of an inch, you are correct. It goes past the 5 inch, but it hasn't gotten to 6 inches yet. So it is 5 inches plus a fraction of an inch. And let's see what part of an inch it is past the 5. So if I look here, okay, remember, we're going to ignore the tiny little marks, and on the paper that I give you, I'm going to white those out. Halfway between the 5 and the 6, right in the middle, is going to be our 1/2 mark. Okay? That 1/2 is the same as 2/4, because these are broken up into fourths. 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 4/4. This is 1/4. That was 2/4. This is 3/4. And that's 4/4, which is another whole. So, I want you to look closely at the picture, and I want you to write down how long this pen is. We already know that it is 5 whole inches, and then what fraction of an inch is it in addition to that? Okay, if you said 1/4, you are correct. So it is 5 1/4 inches long. It's very important that I label that. All right. Now, you are going to do this one on your own. Oh, wait, hold on a second. I'm going to white these out, and then I'm going to put it back in front of you. So I'm going to pause this, and I'm going to start it in a second. Okay. So I whited out the extra little lines. What I want you to do is on your piece of paper, I want you to letter it A, B, C, and D. Because you're going to measure some objects, and you're going to write your answers on a paper. And then you're actually going to put those answers on the Google form that is attached to your assignments page. So please letter A, B, C, and D. There's 4 problems. Problem A, B, C, and D. Okay? Now, problem A, I'm going to have it zoomed in so you can see it up close. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep moving it down for you for each problem as we go. But I'm not going to tell you the answers. So if you need more time past what I've shown you, just keep pausing the video so you can look at it for longer. So problem A, there's a push pin here. Okay, it starts at 0 and it stops right here. I'll give you a little bit of a hint. Think about it. Here's 1. It's not there yet. So it's not even a whole inch. It's less than a whole. So it's only going to be a fraction of a whole. It's only going to be a fraction of an inch. Okay? And you need to label it either IN period, or you could write out inches for how long it is. If you need to pause the video to finish A before you move on, go ahead and do that. I'm going to move down to B. Okay. Letter B. So starting here at 0 and it ends over here. I'm going to give you a hint. Okay, it's past the 1 inch, but it hasn't gotten to 2 yet. So it is going to be 1 whole inch plus a fraction of an inch. 1 and something inches. Okay. All right. Again, pause if you need more time on problem B. Moving down to C. Okay. Sorry about that. Trying to steady my document camera. Okay. Problem C. All right. I'm not going to give you any hints for problem C. Write down how many inches this pencil is. Don't forget to label it with inches or IN period. Pause if you need to. Moving on to problem D. Okay. This is a nail. It starts at 0 and it goes here. It stops right here. Okay. I'm not going to give you any hints. Don't forget to label it as inches. And feel free to pause the video if you need more time to look at it. From here, you're going to transfer all of your answers for problems A through D to the Google form so I can check your work. All right, good luck.